I want you to close your eyes and truly feel the deepest, most isolating pain you can imagine. The kind of grief that doesn't just make you cry, but physically paralyzes you, making the world around you turn to a hopeless, endless gray. That was me, standing by my mother's casket. Elena was my entire world, the unbreakable anchor that kept the fragile structure of my family life from collapsing, and now she was gone. The doctor's report, delivered with cold, clinical finality, cited a massive, unexpected coronary event. It was sudden, shocking, and left a cold, empty, gaping hole in my existence that felt impossible to fill. But the true, soul-crushing horror wasn't the silence of her absence. It was the sight of my father, Arthur, my supposedly devastated father and husband, across the room, smiling, laughing, and whispering intimately with his mistress, Veronica, right there at my mother's solemn funeral service. The sight of their twisted, almost celebratory faces, the sheer, barbaric disrespect, ignited a terrifying, cold fire of rage within me. I swore an immediate, silent vow that I would find a way to make him pay for this ultimate transgression. But before I could even begin to plan my revenge, an impossible sound broke through my rage. My phone buzzed. It was a text message. And it was from the most impossible source, my mother's phone number. The message simply said, "Don't bury me yet. Meet me at the cemetery now." When I arrived at the desolate, freshly dug gravesite, what I found made my blood run cold, confirming the impossible truth that my entire life had been built upon a monstrous lie. This is the true story of how a single, impossible call from the grave exposed a brutal murder and ensured a final, public justice was served. Before we dive into the chilling layers of this deeply personal mystery, tell me in the comments, what city are you watching us from? Let me know where I can find the strongest listeners, the ones who truly understand justice. And if you believe that the dead deserve to have their truth heard, please hit that subscribe button right now to join our community of true revenge story lovers. I promise you, you will not want to miss the devastating twist at the end. My name is Maya. My mother, Elena, died exactly 2 weeks ago on a quiet Tuesday morning. She was only 52. She was the absolute light in our home, the quiet, moral strength that balanced out my father's overwhelming, often ruthless, ambition. She was a simple, trusting woman, utterly devoted to her family and to maintaining the illusion of a happy marriage. My father, Arthur, was the epitome of the cold, calculating, successful businessman. For years, his life had been a blur of business trips, late meetings, and urgent closures. My mother, with her blind faith, always believed his excuses and his endless promises of future stability. I, however, had long harbored deep, gnawing doubts about his character. I always suspected that his love for us was strictly conditional, tied only to his convenience and his financial needs. The emotional debt he owed her was simply one he never intended to pay. The initial days of mourning were excruciating. The funeral service itself was a protracted, agonizing performance that lasted over 2 hours. Arthur insisted on a large, expensive, public ceremony, a chance for him to project the image of the heartbroken widower to his colleagues and peers. I felt utterly detached, focusing entirely on my mother's closed, overly polished casket, desperately trying to hold on to the last remnants of her memory before she was truly gone. The silence of the church was broken only by the priest's monotonous drone and my own internal, rising tide of grief. Every forced hug from a well-wisher felt like an intrusion. It was during the final reading, a sentimental passage my father had specifically requested, that the first spike of pure, white-hot, uncontrollable rage pierced my numbness. My attention was drawn by a familiar, overly sweet, cloying perfume, the scent of cheap ambition and expensive desperation, a scent I knew my mother absolutely despised. I scanned the room, and there, near the back exit, obscured slightly by a large floral arrangement, stood my father. He wasn't crying, he wasn't even attempting to look sad. He was locked in a private, intimate, and entirely inappropriate conversation with Veronica, his sleek, too attentive administrative assistant. They weren't grieving, they were giggling, their heads close together, whispering secrets into each other's ears. At his dead wife's funeral, I watched him briefly touch her wrist, a gesture that was not just familiar, but possessive and almost triumphant. In that agonizing, crystallizing moment, I knew the soul-destroying truth. My father wasn't just having an affair, he was actively celebrating his freedom and his anticipated financial windfall. This wasn't mourning, this was a sickening victory lap over his deceased wife. The sight made me physically sick. I couldn't stay a moment longer in that hypocritical hall. I fled the packed, suffocating room, the image of their smiling faces searing itself permanently into my memory. I stumbled onto the quiet church grounds, collapsing onto a cold, isolated stone bench, consumed by the desperate, clawing need for immediate revenge. I pulled out my phone, ready to unleash a lifetime of suppressed anger and expose his disgusting affair to the world via social media. But before I could even open the app, a sound cut through my rage. My phone screen blazed to life with a name I knew was literally impossible. Elena Sterling. My breath hitched violently in my throat. I dropped the phone onto the pavement, the sound echoing loudly in the deserted square. For a full minute, I simply stared at it, my heart hammering so hard against my ribs I thought it would shatter. I finally gathered the courage to pick it up, my hands shaking uncontrollably. It had to be a mistake. A system glitch. A hack. It had to be. I desperately tapped on the message notification. There was no voice message, no recorded audio from beyond the grave, which in a strange way was even more chilling. Only those impossible, chilling, typed words. Don't bury me yet. Meet me at the cemetery now. The timestamp showed it was sent mere seconds ago. I checked the number again. It was hers. The exact personal phone number she had used for the last 2 decades. Logic screamed that this was a cruel, twisted joke, a prank by some sadistic relative or a malicious hacker. But something deeper, something primal and unbreakable rooted in my love for my mother, told me I had no choice. I had to go. I hailed a cab almost instantly and gave the driver the address of the main city cemetery, the very place my mother was scheduled to be interred the next day. The thought that she might be alive, that she might have faked her death to escape him, was the only thing giving me the terrifying strength to move forward. The drive was agonizingly slow. The cemetery was vast, ancient, quiet, and absolutely desolate under the harsh afternoon sun. The silence was unnerving, a stark contrast to the earlier church chaos. I directed the cab driver to the specific section where her freshly dug gravesite sat, an ugly, open rectangle of dark, loose earth next to a cold, polished granite headstone waiting for her name. I paid the driver and stepped out, the silence immediately amplifying my anxiety. The open grave was empty, waiting for the coffin to arrive tomorrow. There was no one around. The air was heavy, the scent of fresh earth and the overly sweet lilies suffocating me. I walked slowly towards the grave site, my eyes frantically darting everywhere, searching for a sign of my mother or anyone, anything. Was she here? I reached the edge of the pit. And then I saw it. It wasn't a ghost. It wasn't my mother standing there, resurrected. Tucked neatly and deliberately behind a small, recently placed bouquet of white lilies, her favorite flower was a phone. Her actual phone. The one my father had vehemently claimed was lost or damaged beyond retrieval the very morning she died. My blood truly froze then. This was a complex, sophisticated setup. A premeditated trap. But by whom? I quickly snatched the phone. It was still logged into her private account. The screen was still displaying the message sent to me. I frantically checked the sent box. The message had been sent using a scheduled text service, a feature I knew my technically savvy mother sometimes used for things like automatic reminders. She hadn't sent it from beyond the grave. She had sent it before she died, scheduling it to be delivered precisely during the time of her public farewell. The call to the cemetery wasn't a ghostly plea. It was a dying mother's ingenious, brilliant, and final attempt at reaching out and securing justice. I immediately scrolled through her hidden files and encrypted folders. There were no mundane calls, no everyday texts. But in a highly protected folder labeled Arthur's Truth, for Maya only, a file caught my eye. It was simply labeled, Final will and instructions.mp4. I opened it, my entire body trembling with dread. The video lit up with my mother's face. She looked weak, tired, but terrifyingly clear-eyed and composed. The timestamp on the video was exactly 12 hours before her cardiac event. In the video, she spoke slowly, deliberately, her voice weak but firm. She revealed the agonizing, methodical truth. Maya, my dearest strength, if you are watching this, it means Arthur has succeeded in killing me. He hasn't been successful in his work for years. He's been sinking into massive, undisclosed debt, secretly using our entire savings and retirement accounts to prop up his failing ventures. He changed the beneficiary on my massive life insurance policy last week, making himself the sole, immediate heir. When I finally confronted him with the evidence of his fraud and his affair with Veronica, he didn't apologize. He laughed. He coldly told me he was leaving me for Veronica and needed my insurance money to pay off his lenders and start a new, debt-free life with her. Her voice cracked with deep-seated pain. When I threatened to go to the police and the press with his financial crimes, he made the decision to eliminate the problem permanently. He didn't just stand by, he actively and methodically poisoned my heart medication. He deliberately tampered with the dosage of my usual pills, ensuring it was lethal but looked exactly like a natural, tragic cardiac event. The toxicology report will confirm it, but the police won't know to look unless they are told what they are looking for. The camera then focused an extreme close-up on a small, commonplace container of pills on her bedside table. She pointed a trembling finger to a tiny, almost invisible scratch mark on the plastic seal of the container. He tampered with this. The police won't know to look unless you show them this video. I planted this phone here and set the time message because I knew he would claim the phone was lost and destroy the evidence. I needed you to come here in this moment of my supposed final rest to find the terrifying truth. The final moment of the video was the most heart-wrenching. She looked directly into the lens, tears finally beginning to well up in her eyes. I knew he would try to kill me. I prepared this call and this video. Please, Maya, my strength. Don't let him get away with it. Don't let him enjoy my hard-earned money with that woman. My funeral is his final, cruel play. You are the only person who can stop him. Go to the police. The video is the truth, and I love you, my daughter. My hands were shaking, but not from grief anymore, from a cold, focused resolve. My mother hadn't died naturally. She had been murdered by the man I called father, and she had used her technical know-how and her deep, abiding love for me to set up the ultimate, most powerful posthumous trap. The call to the cemetery wasn't a ghost's plea, it was a dying mother's brilliant, final act of justice. I knew exactly what I had to do. I didn't go to the police immediately. My father was at his weakest now, at his final moment of triumph, expecting his big payout. I wanted his humiliation to be public, final, and absolute. I drove back to the church reception hall, the phone containing the video clutched in my hand like a loaded weapon. The reception was in full swing. My father, Arthur, stood on a makeshift stage, glass in hand, ready to deliver his final, saccharine toast, the final performance of the grieving widower. Veronica was standing smugly near the front row, already calculating her future. I walked straight up to the stage, my eyes locked on his. I didn't say a word to him. I simply seized control of the stage's media console and wirelessly mirrored my mother's phone. I projected the image of my mother's face, pale, determined, and ultimately victorious, onto the massive screen behind my father. Arthur froze mid-sentence, the glass of wine in his hand shaking violently. His eyes, fixed on his dead wife's face on the screen, went wide with sheer, abject terror. The entire room gasped. I turned up the volume to the maximum setting, and my mother's clear, damning voice filled the vast, silent room, detailing his massive financial ruin, his affair with Veronica, and the cold-blooded poisoning of her heart medication. The chaos that followed was both terrifying and satisfying. Veronica tried to flee but was blocked by my mother's shocked, furious extended family. My father, the once powerful businessman, collapsed onto the stage, dropping his wine glass, babbling incoherent excuses. The police, whom I had discreetly called from the cemetery with a detailed tip about a murder cover-up, walked in and placed him under arrest right there, in front of all his peers, his family, and his mistress. I watched him being led away in handcuffs, the guilt and fear etched into his face, his final performance ruined forever. He never got the insurance money. He never got his new life with Veronica. He got life in prison. My revenge was complete. I lost my mother, but I found the strength to honor her last, most brilliant wish. Never underestimate a mother's will to protect her daughter, even from the grave. Tell me in the comments, was this the perfect revenge for a grieving daughter? Do you think my mother was watching and guiding me? And if you believe true justice was served, please make sure to like the video and share it with a friend who needs to hear this chilling story. Thank you for listening to my mother's truth.